Welcome, I'm Elise,
And I'm Jess, and this is Spiritual Alchemy,
the podcast where we explore the intersection of science and spirituality
and how it shapes our everyday lives.
Hi, Jess.
Hey, Elise.
We're back.
We're back.
Today, we're talking about rituals.
And in religion.
And spirituality.
Yeah.
Just to start off, historically, what do you think was the first rituals that Homo sapiens or Neanderthals or any type of offshoots of our species, what do you think the first ones ever done were?
Well, I know the answer, so it's not gonna be a surprise, but I can pretend like I don't know.
Okay. Surprise me.
Burial. Burying the dead. And this dates back, like we said, middle Paleolithic era, 45 to 200,000 years ago.
So it's just so long.
So long. And we talked about in our religion episode that the oldest religion is paganism, which is the practice of celebrating the cycles of life, emphasis on the cycles of life with birth, death, and life.
Everything in between.
Everything in between. And you brought up this point that what separated us from animals was that we bury our dead.
We do. And how beautiful of a species to exist, acknowledge one another, and then celebrate one another after death.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we continue on in a way.
Well, it's interesting to also see, jumping way ahead. It's just beautiful how it's grown from this thing. I would if there was like those like dinner party questions, like who would you invite to your dinner party? If there was a moment in time that I could go back to, I'd be like, take me back to one of these burial rituals. I want to see how these Paleolithic, Neanderthal, Homo sapiens, how they treated death.
Oh, I want to go back and see an Egyptian pharaoh burial.
Yeah.
But then, in my opinion, in Western culture, I think we are heavily missing the celebration of time and times of year and our summer solstice, our winter solstice,
phases of the moon,
which we already celebrate as a friend group.
Yeah.
And it's every 28 days.
Yeah.
It's every 28 days. So because our beautiful calendar does not follow 28 days, it's a different date every month.
Yeah.
But I've talked about this before, the concept of time and those little numbers on our analog, on our watches, on our phones. Ancient cultures did not have this. They had the sun rising, the sun setting, and the moon phases. And they relied on the summer solstice and knowing when to plant their crops, knowing when those animals were migrating. It was really, really important to be in tune with nature. And I feel like we have very much moved away from that.
Yeah.
So if it's my one goal, I want everybody to know what season we're in, when the full moon is, when the summer solstice and the winter solstice is.
I love that. Well, also, in getting into the moons, the 28 moons, every moon had a different name. And you started tracking the moons when you were in Buffalo. And I also am a moon girl. I love to look at the moon. I love a full moon. Love to learn about it because there's so much history in why full moons are so significant. And each moon at a different part of the year is symbolic of a different time of year, different harvest. There's a moon in, I believe it's January, a sturgeon moon, which is when the sturgeon fish were like, they would hunt them. So it's, and there's a hunter's moon, and there's a, like, there's the harvest moon, there's the pink moon, there's the flower moon, there's so many different parts of the year. And it's also fun to look back and see how those names have changed, how those symbols have changed as humans have evolved, and to think back to, you know, kind of the early days of humans starting to track the phases of the moon, and count how many times the moon went around, and how they figured all that out. It's just interesting to see how you tie it all back to early civilizations.
Why would we need to track time to then create rituals? Would you know? I mean, when I was asked this,
Why would we need to track time for rituals?
I had no idea. I was like,
so there. Do you have the answer now?
Yeah, it's in my brain.
Okay.
So they found a stick with 28 notches on it. And at first they thought it was a stick that someone would use for hunting. Why would a man, a hunter, need to carry around a stick that has 28 notches on it?
You don't want to hear what my brain just said. And it wasn't that bad. It was just like, why would a man do anything?
Reproduction.
Oh.
Women figured out that there was only a certain time during their cycle that they could get pregnant. And every woman's period is about every 28 days. And certain cultures and certain religions would have rituals, because this is when you are fertile. This is when you can bear fruit. This is when you can continue this offspring in our lineage. I mean, it was, and to me, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And tying it back to the moon, it's the same thing. It's the same timeline, 28 days.
Fertility rituals go back just as far as these burial rituals. And again, emphasis on life, death, and birth.
I might get some heat for this. I would say women, we are the keeper of time. We are the keeper of time, because we are only able to bear children for a certain amount of time. We are only able to get pregnant for an even shorter amount of time. I mean, what our bodies are a clock. We are a clock.
It's
ain't nobody needs some analog with this body.
Well, then I would argue too that when a woman is not in sync with their body, or has been deprived of certain nutrients, isn't in rhythm with themselves, their clock gets off. I mean, like, I hate the phrase, like, your biological clock is ticking, but all I can think of is my cousin Vinny when I think of that. Your biological clock is ticking. Okay? So, but I think of my biological clock as like my month. Like, where are my hormone levels? Where is my energy level? What type of food do I need to be as a nutritionist, fitness pro?
She knows.
I know. I track when I'm feeling tired, when I'm feeling fatigued. Like, there are weeks when I'm like, wow, that workout last week I would have been breezing through. This week, my energy is lower. My hormones are lower, which means I'm probably deprived of this nutrient, this nutrient, and this nutrient, because my body is depleting. So I need to make sure I'm getting these micronutrients in my food, and eating properly, and like getting good sleep. Hyper awareness.
You're hyper aware of it. I mean, as a singer as well, I know when it's coming, because my voice does some wacky stuff, and I'm like, that's not easy to sing. And it's usually easy to sing. So I also preach that in my studio for women, and men's hormones do fluctuate as well. Not as much as women.
Men's hormones actually fluctuate more.
My mind is just blown.
So women are on a lunar cycle. Men are on a solar cycle.
Oh.
So men's energy in the mornings, they have more testosterone and higher spikes of testosterone. And then through the day, that testosterone falls off and gets ready for a new. So they go on a sun cycle.
That's
They go with the
crazy.
sun while women go with the moon, which is why in a lot of cultures there is a goddess of the moon and a god of the sun.
Well, now you know.
The more you know, the more you tie back. Again, it's all rooted in all of our history.
And in our rituals. So to bring it back to rituals, what rituals do you remember from a kid growing up?
Oh my God. Growing up Catholic, so many.
I
I
think the
mean,
Catholic Church is nothing but rituals.
Catholic Church is nothing but rituals, which is so funny to me to see as an adult. And, one thing that I actually really remember is that at a certain point, my my mom had us also during Lent, during Easter, we also started kind of observing Passover, but very specifically a Seder dinner. So we would go through the rituals of all these symbols and what they mean and what Passover was, and talking about like that journey, and say like, kind of like I would say like not as intense version as like a Jewish community might celebrate, but it was I loved doing it because it was something out of our normal. It was something that we did outside of church. Like we just did this at home, and it was just something that became a ritual for us every year. Before we went to Easter Mass, we would have a Seder dinner. I thought it was just such a beautiful ceremony because every single piece of it has meaning, and you approach it in such a ritualistic way, and you do it in a certain order, and you say certain prayers at certain times, and I just loved it. I
Wow.
loved it.
Same. I mean, there are so many things that we did that were tied to the church, but also are very much tied to my Italian culture.
Oh
The
yeah.
seven fish dinner on Christmas Eve,
Yeah.
but even magical things such as I remember for St. Patrick's Day,
Mm-hmm.
my mom would help us make traps to catch the leprechauns,
Cute.
right? Or she would like randomly dye the toilet bowl
Mm-hmm.
water green, and she was like, "Ooh, I guess the leprechaun was in here." And it's
Yeah.
so silly, but rituals bring magic to life,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps, and they keep us tied to our childhoods. They keep us tied to who we are, and they can change. I think that's another thing that needs to be acknowledged, that rituals can and should change. They shouldn't not
Mm-hmm.
can't just be the same thing.
They evolve.
They evolve. Thank you. That was the
Yeah.
word I was looking for.
Waiting for the tooth fairy,
What did
birthdays.
you so we my family does to this day, and I should bring this more around my friends for birthdays. We did this with my cousins and my aunts and uncles when we all got together. If it was my birthday, cake would come out, I would blow out the candles, make my wish.
Mm.
But then whose ever birthday was next, I would put the person whose birthday it was, you would put the first cut in the cake,
Mm.
and whose ever birthday was next would pull out the knife.
Oh,
Isn't
that's
that really
cute.
sweet?
That's cute.
And I my whole life,
Beautiful.
and sometimes I'll be out with friends and
Yeah.
I'll remember that and make somebody do that. But I think I would like to do that more because it's acknowledging where we are,
Mm-hmm.
we are celebrating your birthday, but it's also acknowledging what is in the future to come,
Mm-hmm.
and pre-anticipating that, like, hey, it's your birthday now, but it's their birthday next.
Yeah.
And how beautiful. And in my family, of course, we've got people born on the same day, so I remember like multiple hands on
Yeah.
the handle at pulling it out. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really that I know where that ritual came from.
Yeah.
Where did the history of a ritual in the name of a spiritual practice originate from? What from earliest civilizations, and what was the purpose or goal about them? Because I think that has truly changed over time. What
What
I
the
just kind
goal?
of said, family rituals now are more to keep your origin, keep your family, keep those memories. But what was the goal of it way back when in history?
I mean, we talked about burial,
Mm-hmm.
and so Atapuerca in
Or
Spain.
Puerca,
Atapuerca?
I think
Atapuerca.
is how I
There we go.
Atapuerca. That's how I say it.
I'm gonna say like that. Atapuerca.
Great.
Great. In Spain, it's an archaeological site, World Heritage Site, known for the Pit of Bones, or the Cima de los Huesos, bones of humans. So where some of the bones date back to the Paleolithic era.
So long ago.
Yeah, like think like 50,000-year-old set of teeth.
I'm going to bring it back to bones.
Yeah.
But
We're still on bones.
So many sites around the world celebrate the summer solstice when you have the longest daylight
Mm-hmm.
in a day. Stonehenge, the sun will set perfectly in between. And if you've never looked up a picture of it, you have to look it up. It is my dream to go see this in person. And to just think that they've built this to celebrate the summer solstice. The pyramids of Giza are built under Orion's belt. So there's only like one time during the year. I actually don't know if it's near the summer solstice, but I can't remember if it's on. But I think it's like a month that you can look up and literally draw a direct line from the tops of the pyramid up to the Orion's belt. And just think about the math and the science that had to go into figuring that out, and the significance of why it would want to be celebrated and get that snapshot of it in time. It's
like, why was it so important for that to be the goal? Like, think about the meaning, because the pyramids did not take a minute to build. The Stonehenge, we don't even know how those were built because they're so old. Like, to think that without modern technology, how important it was to these humans.
And maybe we're all overthinking it. Maybe it's as simple as, hey, we need something really big and prominent to tell us when the summer solstice is going to be here, or when Orion's belt is going to be perfectly lined up, because then we're going to know when the Nile floods. Like, we don't know how simple or meta it was. And those are always questions that I ask myself. And those are big examples of rituals, but even down to cutting the cake, saying prayers at night, those are still rituals too. We've also already talked about the rituals of ancient Egypt, mummification, safe passage to the afterlife. Ancient Greece and Rome made sacrifices to gods like Zeus and Jupiter, central to maintaining divine favor and securing good harvest. Mesopotamia, their rituals focused on creation and sacrifices. Once again, a lot of people sacrificing things to gods.
Yeah.
Messy.
Again, it's like, it's interesting to think, I wonder who or what started the sacrificial ritual. Because if we think back to paganism, and arguably, and I don't think it is that arguable, but ancient Egypt, ancient Greek, Roman, Mesopotamia, those are all indigenous, all based, like, very, very tied, and are versions of paganism. So where did these beliefs of sacrifice come into play? Where it's like, to appease the gods, we need to give them a virgin under the full moon, like, or kill a goat, or like, because I mean,
it's violent.
Yeah, it's a violent thing. And for a practice that emphasizes birth, life, death so much, how interesting that became the norm. It's interesting to see how all these beliefs changed over time.
Right. And how to one culture it just made sense. Like the Aztecs, for example, they were totally into human sacrifice. Those big their pyramids.
Yeah.
Yeeting people off those pyramids. They're like, it's gonna rain tomorrow. Yeet.
Yeah.
And to us that makes no sense, but to them
made perfect
sense. I want to bring up the indigenous cultures of vision quests or sweat lodge ceremonies as a rite of passage and spiritual liberation. Or coming of age for like young men, they would go off and hunt for the first time. And the idea of like pushing your physical and mental body as far as you possibly can as a ritual.
Yeah.
How far can you go as a human?
Coming of age is an interesting type of ritual as well. I think like bar bat mitzvahs. like very much celebrating like the becoming of a, adult, moving up, from your childhood and becoming like a bigger part of society and what that means and taking on a little more responsibility, not just for others, but for yourself.
Maybe we're meant to have these markers in
Mm.
our life. Because if we don't have markers to like look forward to or get to, what's the point? Sorry, that's a meta question. I'm asking the right person.
You
What's the
are.
point?
So I think that again, like we tie it back to the human experience and humans needing structure. Why do the crops fail? Why we have to pray to the gods so we have a good harvest. We have to uh make sure that this hunting season is good, that we can prepare for the winter when everything will be quiet and the world will be still. We look forward to the spring when the flowers bloom. We look forward to summer when the weather is nice and the sun is shining down upon us and we can celebrate.
So perhaps we found meaning in the nature of
Mm.
ourselves.
Paganistic beliefs are based in nature. They
Mm.
are focused around nature and the earth. So I think that these little rituals, like think birthdays, celebrating like a year, you got it around the sun one more year, and celebrating life. And that is a celebration of a marker. I mean, I don't think that Neanderthals were celebrating their birthdays. I don't, but who knows? Like, we'll get into the history of birthdays in a later day, but it's just thinking back on all of these times, like why every year do we have to celebrate Christmas? Why every year do we celebrate Passover? Why every year do we remember these things? And think of the anniversary of a death of a loved one.
I think you just said the key word is remember.
Remember.
We're all just trying to learn and grow, and the only way to do that is to remember.
Mm-hmm.
You must remember that the river is going to flood every 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't honor that, if you don't honor the history of living off the land, living in an area where flood does happen, you're going to be living there and you might build up a community and your community might flood.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, that was the area here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
The Chumash, they knew that the LA River would, I think it was every like 16 or 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine they didn't keep those rituals of counting time and understanding, oh, hey, we're getting closer to the year it's going to flood. What are some modern rituals that organized religions participate in?
I have answers. Prayer and meditation.
We love those.
So daily prayers, meditation practices. I remember growing up, we had to say our nightly prayers
Same.
before going to bed. Religious celebrations, think like Passover, Christmas, we mentioned. Specific rituals and traditions. Then we have rites of passage, baptism, bar bat mitzvah,
Quinceañeras.
weddings, quinceañeras. Those are all examples of religious rites and passage, marking a significant life transition. But then we also have, as I mentioned before, our secular rituals, our daily routines, our meal times, our wellness practices, our celebratory rituals, birthdays, holiday gatherings, social events, our personal rituals of journaling, gratitude lists, our other practices that promote self reflection and mindfulness, our rites of passage, which can be non denominational. We also have protests and marches. Peaceful marches and protests can be seen as rituals expressing social and political views.
What does science have to say about rituals? And have studies been done? Is there anything measurable?
I have a lot to say on this.
I know, I'm excited.
Okay, functions of rituals. So, studies have explored how rituals serve various functions, including social cohesion. So, rituals can foster a sense of community and belonging, meaning making. So rituals provide framework for understanding life's experiences and addressing existential questions. Emotional regulation. Rituals can help individuals cope with stress, grief, and other difficult emotions. Social control. Rituals can reinforce social norms and expectations. So there's psychological effects, there's sociological effects. And the psychological effects, they have proven that it does cause an altered state of consciousness.
Wow.
So rituals can induce an altered state of consciousness characterized by changes in the brain activity and subjective experience. There's a sense of control. So rituals provide a sense of mastery and control over uncertain and stressful situations. Well-being. Participation in religious rituals has been linked to increased well-being and reduced risk of negative outcomes.
So it literally makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So anxiety reduction, improved performance, grief alleviation, enhanced experience, improved well-being, and psychobiological mechanisms. Rituals may trigger specific neurobiological pathways that modulate bodily sensations, symptoms, and emotions similar to the placebo effect. That's how we explain like kind of like healing rituals, or like it would use the example of like sometimes when people get sick, they suddenly become very religious and they find peace in the ritual of religion, and it helps alter their psychological state. And you can find that with that altered state, some stress manifested illnesses will go into a recession.
I think we all just need to be doing more rituals, whatever that means to you.
Whatever that means to you.
Wow.
Yeah. So science doesn't prove that rituals are real in the supernatural sense, but it does suggest that it's a natural human behavior and with real effects on your well being, anxiety, performance, acting as a way to regain control and reduce stress.
So I can tell you this from a musician, professional musician. I just had this thought that rituals are patterns, repeated patterns. And if you know anything about music, music is just a series of patterns. Our brain loves patterns. We crave patterns. And that's why you might like listening to your favorite song over and over again. It's why pop music has a very clear formula of verse, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, bridge, chorus. You know, that's why a lot of songs are written that way. It's also why going back to classical, certain symphonies are written in the same organization. Rituals are just patterns. So of course it makes sense that we as a species strive to create something that is a routine almost, that we get to do once a year, once a month, every day. We need patterns. Wow.
Yeah. Helps us stay in rhythm with our flow,
Right.
with our body's needs and our body's flow.
And everything has a pattern. Wow, my mind is exploding like right now. Hold on. Because if you look up at the sky, the cosmos are nothing but patterns. You know, and then it does change out when we get like a shooting star or an asteroid or something different happening. But at the end of the day, it's pretty steadfast.
Yeah.
Wow. If there is no scientific evidence, does that mean people are accepting the existence of magic in the form of religion?
I would say, I mean, there is scientific evidence. It is mostly psychological and sociological. So again, it's kind of bringing us back to last week's discussion of like collective. Like, think of the energy in the space of a temple, a church, a religious space, or a spiritual space. Could be meditative as well. You've got 200 people, 300 people in that space. Imagine like if all 300 people were devoutly focusing their energy in on this one thing. Could that, based on collective consciousness theory that we talked about last week, could that shift the energy of that space and everybody's energy in that space and raise that vibration or deplete it
Depending
based
on
on the ritual?
Mm-hmm.
I think there is magic to it. I think that while science says, yeah, because you're all doing like it's creating structure, it's creating rhythms. Like,
Rituals can be blind faith. Gives you a sense of purpose, connects you to a community, helps you raise your vibration. Purpose. I keep hearing rituals give you purpose, leading to our journal prompts. And a perfect segue. How have your childhood rituals shaped your view on spirituality and community? And I'm going to add to what I did not write. How can your childhood rituals show up again in your adult life? And if you've never asked yourself this, if you've never really tried to incorporate something from your childhood, bring it back. Oh, I'm going to tell a very sad story.
Tell me.
One time I was on a walking date in a park with someone I was on a date with. I already said that. Anyway, I saw a tree. I said, "Do you want to climb that tree?" He said, "No, I haven't climbed a tree since childhood." And that was the end of the discussion. But that moment struck me so much. I go, if you liked climbing trees as a kid, wouldn't you want to do it again as an adult? So climb that tree. That's your journal prompt. Find something that you did in your childhood and then do it. How do modern rituals impact your sense of connection? How have technology and cultural exchange changed how rituals are practiced? So also paying homage to those that we borrow and learn from Eastern cultures, meditation, yoga, do your research, know where they came from, get curious. Don't just do them blindly. Pay homage to where they came from and just I'm so grateful that I get access to Eastern culture and something that I know my ancestors probably did not have access to. And then my favorite, how do you connect to the solstices? And I'm going to also add moon cycles. If you haven't paid attention to them, this is your official warning. Pay attention, because I want to talk about it more, but we can only do it if people are paying attention. How do you connect to the moon cycles, the solstices, and do you think they should be celebrated more? And that's that.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Go touch a tree.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us today. We're so glad you were here. For more information on our episodes and to connect with us on social media, follow us at Spiritual Alchemy Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Stay golden!